You're standing at the edge of a river, and it looks small. That's the trick of it. Just water, brown with silt, moving a little fast because of last night's rain. You've stood at rivers before. Nothing happened. So your body tells you this is fine. This is ordinary. This is the kind of thing you cross without thinking twice. Then you actually look at it. The current is moving faster than you can sprint. You cannot see the bottom, so you have no idea if it's 3 feet deep or 30. There's no bridge, no rope. You never learned to swim because almost nobody around you knows how. Everything you need is on the other side. Food. Safety. Your group, already across, already getting smaller in the distance. Drowning takes under 2 minutes. This single stretch of water has killed more people like you than almost any predator ever has. So here's the real question. How did anyone survive this again and again for hundreds of thousands of years? And here's the thing, they didn't just cross rivers once in a while. Getting across water like this was basically a requirement for becoming human at all. Today, you check your phone before you leave the house, and it tells you exactly how deep that river is, how wide, how fast it's moving. There's probably a bridge a few miles down, built to hold thousands of tons, engineered by people who calculated exactly how much force moving water can apply. And even now, with all of that, flash floods still kill people every single year who underestimate what water can do. Now take away every part of it. No bridge. No forecast, no warning system of any kind. And somehow, with absolutely nothing, humans didn't just survive crossing water like this. They used it to spread across every landmass on Earth except Antarctica. Say that out loud. It sounds almost impossible. So water wasn't just annoying to deal with. It was actively trying to kill you, in ways that had nothing to do with what you'd expect. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. Depth was never the real danger. Force was. A river only knee-deep, moving fast enough, can knock you flat and pin you before you understand what's happening. And most early humans, as far as we can tell, weren't strong swimmers at all. Real swimming technique probably developed much later than you'd assume. So a river that looked completely crossable could just as easily be the last thing you ever stepped into. And that was only the first problem. Some water wasn't a river at all. It was open sea, wide enough that wading or swimming was never on the table. Archaeologists only recently mapped exactly how sharp this barrier was. It's called the Wallace Line, named after naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace, and it separates two completely different sets of animal species that stayed apart for millions of years. Not because they didn't want to cross, because they physically couldn't. Then there's the third problem, and it's the one that should really sit with you. Even when a crossing was possible, nobody knew what was waiting on the other side. No maps, no scouting report. You could paddle for hours toward land that turned out to have no food, no water, or worse, someone already standing on it. Imagine planning a trip with zero information and no way to turn back once you've committed. Today you check reviews before booking a hotel room. They were checking nothing before betting their life. So water wasn't just an obstacle. In some places, it was a wall nothing could get through. Except something did. Something did get through. And the first answer is almost embarrassingly simple. Rivers and flood don't just carry water. They carry whole trees, tangled mats of vegetation, driftwood ripped loose from the bank upstream. And there's a real chance that before anyone built anything on purpose, someone just grabbed onto one of these as it drifted past and held on. Think about that for a second. The first boat might not have been invented at all. It might have just floated by and someone was desperate enough or clever enough to climb on. That's the accident. Then comes the choice. At some point, humans stopped waiting for the river to hand them a raft and started shaping their own. The oldest known boat we've ever found is a dugout canoe pulled from the ground at Pes, in the Netherlands, roughly 8 to 10,000 years old. That's not a lucky log anymore. That's someone deliberately carving wood into a shape meant to carry them across water. And this solved more than just the physical crisis, it solved part of the unknown crisis too. A raft big enough for 2 or 3 people meant scouting an island was no longer one person's solo gamble. It became a group decision which, when you think about what was actually at stake, changes the entire emotional weight of the crossing. But the third layer is the one that should really stop you. Researchers studying the earliest arrival into what's now Australia have found sites like Majbeeb, dated to roughly 65,000 years ago, and the crossing required to get there wasn't a short paddle across a visible gap. It was open sea, dozens of kilometers with no land in sight for most of the journey. You're not drifting into that by accident. The evidence suggests this was intentional. Someone looked at open ocean with nothing visible on the other side and decided to go anyway. But before we get to the part that changes everything, I have to be honest about something. Now, I have to be fair here, because not every crossing was some calculated act of genius. Some were pure luck. A storm rips a mat of vegetation loose, a person or a small group happens to be on it, and they simply survive long enough to wash up somewhere they never meant to reach. Some researchers point to the small, unusual hominin population found on the island of Flores in Indonesia, near the Liang Bua cave site, as evidence of exactly this kind of accident rather than deliberate seafaring. There's real debate about which crossings were planned and which weren't, and honestly, we may never fully untangle it. But that doesn't weaken the bigger picture here. It strengthens it. However it happened, planned or not, humans got across. But here's the part one saved for last. Because once people started crossing water on purpose, it didn't just move bodies. It moved something else too. Because that same Wallace Line we talked about, the one separating Asia's animals from Australia's, isn't just a fact about kangaroos and tigers living on opposite sides of an invisible border. It's a rule. For millions of years, if you were a land animal, that stretch of open ocean was the edge of your entire world. You didn't cross it. You couldn't. Evolution simply stopped there, and everything on one side stayed on one side, generation after generation, with no exceptions. Until humans showed up on islands they had no biological business reaching. And here's the part one want you to sit with. That means at some point, crossing water stopped being just a survival task. It became one of the only things in the history of life on Earth that could override millions of years of biogeography. Every land animal alive faced that exact same water. Elephants faced it. Big cats faced it. All of them stopped at the edge. Only one species looked at that same edge and treated it like a door. Every other animal on Earth looked at that water and stopped. We looked at it and started building. So go back to that riverbank. Brown water, moving too fast, no bridge, no rope, everything you need sitting on the far side. That fear is real. But so is what happened next, over and over, for hundreds of thousands of years. A log became a raft. A raft became a canoe. A canoe eventually became something that could cross open ocean toward land nobody could even see yet. That instinct you have right now, to look at something impossible and start grabbing whatever's nearby to solve it anyway, isn't quirky. It's ancient. You come from the only species that ever looked at an ocean and decided it was a problem worth solving. That river in front of you? It's not the end of the path. It's just the next one,